Welcome back to Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I'm Cary Quashen along with Jerry Bruce. He's my co-host today. Wishing Mike a speedy recovery. Hopefully he'll be back next week. And it's March, which is National Talk to Your Teen About Sex Month. Wow, that was a lot. We should be talking to our teens about sex all the time, but there is
Indeed.
a month. Yeah. So we have Karen Krupp, and she is with Positively Waiting.
Yes.
And Jerry, we got some statistics. I want you to read them, then I want to give it to Karen.
Some of these are just crazy, but 19 million new cases of STDs are reported every year.
19 million.
Young people ages 15 to 24 years represent only 25% of the sexually experienced population. That's nearly half of all the new STDs.
So wait a second, say that again.
The ages of 15 to 24 of those 19 million represent 25% of them.
And 50% of the sexual activity, diseases.
Right.
Crazy. What do we do about this, Karen?
Well, because it is, talk to your kids about sex week.
We're going to talk to you about Sex Week, right? Everyone listening.
I do want to say that if you're not talking to your kids often about sex, love, and relationships, you're not likely to have an effect. So this is just me on my soapbox for just a moment.
Wait a minute. It's not a one-time conversation?
It is not a one-time conversation.
Can you say those same three things again?
Sex, love, and relationships.
Right. Not just the sex talk.
Not
sex,
just the
love,
sex
and
talk.
relationships.
Well, here's what happens is, and I know parents with gigantic hearts will say, okay, dad's going to take the boys, mom's going to take the girls. They go away for a weekend, sometimes with some horrible series that embarrasses everyone. Mm-hmm. And they think, yes, this is the last time I'll have to talk about this. And it's god awful. And maybe there's jewelry at the end of it if there's a girl. Mm-hmm. And then they think, okay, you're 13. Now I've told you everything you need to know. And they think that information somehow will stick around until they're like 25. And then they're making decisions about sex, love, and relationships. And it literally doesn't happen. Literally, it is a blip on the screen, even though for mom and dad, it was really a big deal, and they agonized over it. So
right.
I say you want to talk about sex and love and relationships.
They agonize over that's kind of really is pathetic, because if we're and I hear that all the time, but if we're adults enough to have babies and have sex to have babies, we better be adult enough to talk to our children about
Well,
it.
here's the thing. This is why I say it doesn't have to be that way. No, it doesn't have to be that way, because the thing that parents think kids are going to ask is not what they ask.
Right.
So mom and dad think, okay, I'm going to talk about sex. My kid wants to know what goes where. No, they don't want your voice in their head telling them what goes where.
Hate to break it to you, but they kind of already know that.
They do already know that. So they don't want to know that. But they do want to know. Boys often want to know from their dad, if I do it just once, I'll stop thinking about it all the time, right? Which, welcome to manhood. No, that's never, ever, ever, ever going to go away. It will always be there, and your job as a man is to learn to manage it.
In fact, the more you do, the more you want.
Exactly. And girls will ask, I'm taking all these risks. I could get pregnant, I could get infected, I could have all of these, complications that come along with this. If I make this gigantic sacrifice and give away my body to this person, it is such a gigantic thing that I'm doing. I'm taking such a big risk. He'll stay with me forever, right? And those are the kinds of questions.
Right, that's their thinking.
That is exactly what they're thinking. So if you're a parent talking to a child, it's not what goes where, it's what happens after that their main concerns are. Right. And so those are the things that a parent can speak to knowledgeably, experientially, in a way that can help their child understand you're making decisions that will have lifetime consequences. I mean, herpes is forever. If you become pregnant, there will be a life that is tied to you forever, whether that life is terminated or parented or placed for adoption. That is a lifetime consequence.
Right.
And so it's always the after part that parents don't really engage. And yet it's where they're the most knowledgeable. I gave away kisses. I gave away experiences that I wish I had saved for my husband.
Right.
That's an easy conversation to have.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, it's all not that tough. I mean, here, 80% of all STDs there's no symptoms.
Exactly.
How do you, I mean, that's an easy conversation to talk to a kid. Hey, you know that you can look at somebody and they can look healthy and not be.
Exactly. And that's a little bit frightening. It's one of the things in our youth presentations when we're talking to kids in school or youth groups or juvie camp or wherever. It takes, they have to be able to process that information.
Right.
And so when I say 80% of the time there are no symptoms, I know they don't process that.
Right.
So I want to follow that up with, that literally means you could be infected and not know it. Right. You could get into bed with someone who's infected and not know it, and you could actually infect someone you care about and not know it. Mm-hmm. Now that gets processed. Mm-hmm. The 80% they won't remember, but the idea that I could hurt someone else,
right,
or that I could get hurt and there wouldn't be some kind of a sign,
right,
is a big deal.
And parents, here's another fact, that it is a whole lot easier for a girl to catch a disease from a guy than a guy catching it from a girl.
That's very true. Just the nature of how our bodies are made and how STDs are transmitted, it is possible for some sexually transmitted infections to be, one of us is on the table vibrating.
Yeah, that would be me. Sorry, I have to turn that off.
Excuse me, this is not that kind of show.
Not that kind of show, but kind of is. So,
So when we're thinking about who's at risk, it is the behaviors that lead to the highest risk.
Exactly.
And
the thinking.
Yes, indeed. But there is a culture, a youth culture, that suggests behavior that you and I as adults would know is risky, and since it is a family show, I'm going to be careful here.
Right.
But behavior that is risky, that is actually common among young people, recreationally.
You know what? I picked up a cell phone about a year ago at one of my groups. One of the kids have left, and it was her performing a sexual act on a boy. And that's the culture we're talking about, because kids are today saying to themselves, that's not really having sex. I can't get pregnant. You're right. You can't get pregnant. But number one, it can hurt self-esteem. Number two, you learn how to respect your body. And number three, you can surely get sick if there's any illnesses.
Everything that can live in the genital area can live in the mouth and the throat.
Exactly.
And in 2010, human papillomavirus, the sexually transmitted infection that leads to cervical cancers, strains that lead to cervical cancers, other strains lead to genital warts.
Right.
It passed smoking for being responsible for cancers of the mouth and throat.
Wow.
So
say that again.
Human papillomavirus, HPV, very, 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 very common infection. In 2010, it passed smoking for being responsible for oral cancers and throat cancers.
Why do you think that is? I already know the answer.
It's all related to sexual behaviors.
Right.
And it's really difficult to understand conceptually that everything that can live in the genital area can also just as happily, the same conditions exist in the throat. And the idea that would be something, there are a number of stories. Dr. Meg Meeker tells a story about a middle school that thought they had an outbreak of strep throat. And they were, hitting the kids with these heavy-duty medications, and it wasn't clearing up, and it turned out to be chlamydia.
Right.
That, hello.
Really? Seriously, I heard that.
And middle school, we're talking, 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
The latest study I saw was that boys as young as 8 now are exposed to some form of pornography.
Well, because of
they see it,
because of
then
social media.
Sure.
So now
they're asking for that.
You take a child that's brain isn't even developing yet, and they start watching something, and then all of a sudden they want to try it.
Sure.
When we were young, when people played doctor and stuff like that, and they're still doing it, but they're learning. There's a whole new world open for that little game they're playing now.
Exactly.
And they get aroused, and that neural pathway, creates, like you said, that superhighway. It bypasses, so many other things they have to learn, before, that arousal process happens with them. One of the other studies I didn't see on here is that age group 15 to 24, the HPV virus, 1 in 4 are infected with HPV. in that age group.
It's
Wait. 1 in 4.
One in four between ages of 15 and 24 years old.
the numbers are higher when you get to the older end of the scale. College campuses, Reuters has done a study that shows they expect about 60% are carriers of all the college students.
Makes sense.
That's an obscene amount. But what's scary is this. There are two things that you can do. One, there is a vaccine. It's very effective against HPV. So if you have that before you're exposed, then it does a pretty good job of fighting off that type of infection. I mean, I don't want to go down the road of vaccines and
No, that's a different
other people's
deal.
concerns with that. But that is an option.
Yes.
And then the other option that people aren't thinking about is, well, wait a minute here. If you are choosing behaviors where warm, moist, infected areas are touching warm, moist, uninfected areas, even though it's not real sex,
Right.
this can be passed along. So in theory, someone could be a virgin and have HPV.
Of course.
And of course, people think, oh, well, that's why we tell kids to use prophylactics. Well, prophylactics are only effective if it's a wetsuit in this case. I'm sorry, you'd have to go head to toe.
Yeah.
And there are no studies at all that show that's effective against skin-to-skin transmission.
And I hate to, here's another fact. People use prophylactics only when they're performing certain kind of sexual activities.
That's right.
They don't use it until they really think, okay, it's time to put it on. So all that lead up stuff that can create and cause serious illnesses aren't taken care of anyways.
Exactly. And I have to admit, that's one of the things that boys in particular will look at me like, wait a minute.
Right.
I have to use it then?
Yes.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And there's an alarm.
And the pressure that these kids are being put on, boys and girls.
Yeah.
Not to use protection, and we're only kids. We can't have any of that stuff. And look how healthy she is, and look how good he looks.
Or they'll say, well, as long as I only have sex with virgins, I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Okay, well,
And
but they have to worry about you.
And in the heat of the moment, people go, what the heck?
Yeah, just this one time. It's fine.
Just this one.
And their brains aren't developed enough to understand the long-term consequences of their decisions. And that's huge.
What are some of the long-term consequences?
Well, just think about
Just
something.
in case people don't know. They should.
Think about this simply. I mean, as an adult, all of us know that we have emotional experiences in our past that kind of haunt us the rest of our lives. Well, sexual experiences are that forever. When we are intimate with another person, that becomes part of our sexual identity.
Right.
So imagine, you're promiscuous, having a good time, however you call it, when you're, 25 up to that age, and then you get married when you're 28. Every sexual partner at some point gets into bed with you.
Right.
You're with your partner, someone you love, someone you've made maybe a lifetime commitment to, and yet you're not going to tell them, I'm thinking about someone I did in college. Mm-hmm. So now there's this
So you carry
space.
that with
there's a I'm hiding from you who I am, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you can't connect. Your bonding mechanism is so broken because there are all these other ghosts in between us, and it literally is the reason why some relationships can never get to the intimate level that they desire, because there is all of this other pain. And that has nothing to do with STDs or baby decisions or, baggage from relationships of voices in your head, abuse. This isn't a normal, healthy, we were just playing, we connected for a little while, and you get into bed with me and my husband. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to tell you that for sure. And of course,
Yeah, by the way, when we were having sex, I was thinking about...
Exactly.
Doesn't happen.
And you would rather die than hurt the love of your life that way. But you can't possibly understand that at 16.
Right.
You can't, literally, your brain cannot understand this intimate experience you're having right now is going to show up one day when you really want to forget it.
Right. I try and tell them, because I work with adolescents, that most of the choices we do today are based on past experiences. Your choices to do something, or avoid something is based on your past experience, and that's what's going to happen with picking a partner in the future.
Right.
All all these other people that you've experienced, you're picking this one partner because you had a good experience with this one or a bad experience with that one. And some get it, some don't. But.
I do find that, when I do a parent talk, when I'm talking to parents about how to connect with their kids, there is always in the back of my mind, I don't want to hurt anybody, but I need to say, straight out, your kids are going to duplicate the relationship that they see.
Right.
If it's not what you want for them, maybe you'll put up with it for you because it was just so much work just to get to this place anyway, and we can deal with it. If that's what you want for your kids, you keep modeling that, and they're going to duplicate it.
Right.
So then, parents are, wait a minute, we're not getting along.
Right.
Okay, you need to address that as if it's on fire because your kids will duplicate it.
Exactly. Do what I say, not what I do doesn't work.
Never.
No.
Never. And it becomes their normal. If a child, a girl in particular, sees mom being disrespected, she will think that's okay for someone to talk to her that way.
Right.
If she sees mom being respected, don't you talk to your mom that way. You apologize. She's going to expect that kind of behavior will be her normal. So whatever that dynamic is going to make a difference in who she chooses for a partner and how she expects to be treated in a relationship.
And by the way, it's never too late to make changes.
Thank goodness for that, because their brains aren't finished. That's the best part. Their brains aren't finished until 25.
We got to the mid-20s to figure that out.
Exactly.
Even though we don't want to wait.
Well, what we want parents to do is we want them to be thinking, you shift as an adolescent from the parent protector mode to the parent coach mode. And what you ultimately want is to train your child to be able to live with the consequences of their decision. And that can be painful.
Exactly.
I'm sorry that you made choices that mean you don't get the car this weekend. I'm sorry that you made choices that mean you don't have any money to go on this trip with your friends. I'm sorry you made those choices. Well, it has to be you laid out the choices for them, and then they live with those decisions.
Right.
And it's very painful for parents to see their kids be in pain. But I always say this: better for your child to make a really bad decision that costs you $100 than for them to get out into the world as an adult and make a decision that costs $100,000.
Exactly. Or emotionally keeps them stagnant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But it's true. I got 3 kids, and then my daughter still lives with me. And when she hurts, I hurt.
Yeah.
When she's sad, I'm sad.
And you want to fix it as a dad.
And I want to fix it. I'd rather take the pain than see her hurt.
And yet you ultimately want her to be able to manage when you're not around. And that's so hard.
Right.
You have to keep thinking, if I'm not here, what skill set will my child actually have? And if you haven't given them the skill set, if you've been the person who, I don't want you to see this person, I don't want you to have these behaviors, I don't want you to go here, see this, I'm not going to give you the ability to cope with those.
Exactly.
Then when you get out, they dive right into the pool.
And that's why we're seeing right now in a lot of colleges.
Exactly.
We're seeing a lot of kids that were smothered and micromanaged completely, and now that are out there going, whoa, what do I do?
They don't have the ability to control their impulses.
Right.
And it's like not teaching them how to manage money. It is just as abusive to not teach your child how to manage money so that they run up a lot of debt and then they can't function. It's just as bad not to help them learn to control those impulses.
Right. And when I hate to say it, but when these adults hit our rehabs, you know what we're teaching them?
Oh, golly.
It's not really so much on not using drugs, because they're not using drugs in rehab.
Yeah.
We're teaching them how to deal.
The coping skills they didn't get when they were teens.
They didn't get when they were teenagers.
Yeah.
That they masked with drugs or whatever the deal, sex, whatever it was that got them to mask those feelings. Now we got to teach them how to be able to feel those feelings at whatever age they come in,
and to not feel overwhelmed. If you learn as a teenager, I feel overwhelmed with this because the emotional center of their brain is fully developed, but they don't know what to do with the emotions yet. If they're thinking in those terms, I'm overwhelmed. But it's really, 5 years from now, you're not even going to remember this moment.
Right.
Their ability to learn to cope with that, then the next layer, when it's a crisis that affects the rest of the family, if it's a crisis that affects my friends, they have something to work with. But if mom and dad are stepping in and making sure you're not feeling that pain.
And also, before we go on break, I just want to, parents, never discount your kids' feelings.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to love. Because I hate to say it, but when teenagers come to you and they say, I love him, guess what? They love him. When we say it's infatuation and it's all this stuff, it's intense. Whatever it is, it's what we feel when we're in love. Which on steroids.
They believe that, at least.
And that's really what matters. I mean,
Exactly.
and you can say, I acknowledge that what you are feeling now is powerful and intense, and you've never experienced anything like it, and I can totally acknowledge that.
Yeah.
It may be different in 2 weeks, but you don't need to have that conversation until 2 weeks from now. It's not the same.
Right.
The parent who discounts it loses credibility
Immediately.
with guidance.
Right.
Why would I take your advice when you don't understand how I feel?
How bad it hurts.
Exactly.
On that note, this is Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Welcome back to Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I'm Cary Quashen along with my co-host Jerry Bruce. And hey, Jerry, we have Karen Krupp with us from Positively Waiting. You know why we have her on today?
How to talk to your teens about sex.
So we're wrapping up our show. Exactly. No, I mean, it's kind of crazy, but I think that it's definitely a thing that we need to talk about. And
Sex, love, and relationships, I guess is what it is.
Yes.
Indeed.
Perfect.
Indeed. We don't want to separate sex from love and relationships if we can.
Exactly. Karen, how do we end this show? We have about 5 more minutes. What do you want? What message do you really want to give out? How do you want to close this show?
I want parents to know they have a lot more influence than they think they do in this area. There is something that teens register sort of unconsciously, that if I'm talking to my peers about relationships, they don't have any more experience than I do. And so they kind of register, none of us know what we're talking about. So when parents are willing to engage and willing to talk to kids about the relationship aspect, which is the most important part for teens, they're very relational. They're trying very hard to figure out how relationships work. If they can engage in that aspect, then the other questions will come in. Right. So one of the things that I like to do with dads in particular, even if you're going through a season where you're not getting along with your daughter, is
which we all have minutes of.
I'm sure
maybe hours.
It's stressful. Let me just say this. Your daughter will use her relationship with you as a template to measure all other men. Right. And ideally, you want to start when they're very young. But if you haven't, you can start this at any time. Just take concentrated time with her, one-on-one, not all the girls at once, not, son and daughter together, but just her with dad, and have, ice cream at McDonald's or whatever, just a concentrated 15 minutes. And you need to do it over time because it builds up in her mind. This is how it feels when someone who cares about me spends time with me. And she'll use that as the measure for how should I feel when I'm with this other guy? Mm-hmm. Does he speak to me in ways that my dad never talks to me that way? Right. And it's important, especially in families that are blended, where, maybe there's a natural dad and a stepdad or maybe a boyfriend. If whoever has the most time with them is going to be that template. Right. And it's really important that it be a good template. Mm-hmm. And then for boys would rather die than ask their mom a question about girls. After 13, mom's thinking, it's going to be great. My son will always confide in me. Yeah, that's going to go away.
When I hear that, I get nauseous. Okay, no, that doesn't happen.
It's going to go away. Right. There are going to be things that he will find just way too embarrassing. Yeah, exactly. But... And none of our kids tell us everything. Of course. And they want privacy and independence.
Right.
But boys listen to the phrase, girls really like it when. Mm-hmm. And if mom can throw those conversations in, he's picking up his ears, he's listening, even if he's texting. It's like, okay, I think a tip's coming along here. I'm going to pay attention.
Right.
And if mom can help him understand, she really appreciates it when you notice her appearance. Not in a in a sleazy sexual way, but that you see her as a person. That's going to make a big difference to her. If boys can hear those kinds of things from their mom, suddenly mom is now a source.
Right.
A source. And he'll come and say, why does she always do this? Why does she say this? Why does she get upset when I just look at another girl? Oh, it's because she thinks you're comparing. No, I like her. I like her. I just can't help it. This girl's practically undressed. What am I going to do? Not look?
Right.
Well, as a man, yes, that's exactly what you'll do. You'll choose to redirect your vision because it is a sign of maturity.
Yes.
So those are the things that I would want to say to moms and dads with children of the opposite sex. Children of the same sex, just be very, very careful that you don't assume that they think like you do. There's going to be differences. There are going to be different preferences. And it's just important to allow them to experience that.
And remember that our children are not mind readers. They don't know what we're thinking. Even though we think they do, they don't.
Well, and it can be quite comical. I do remember a conversation with a mom who the daughter wanted her to drive 3 hours to connect with this boy. He lived in San Diego and mom was, in the Los Angeles area. And so it was like, Mom, won't you take me to meet this boy? And she said, no, I'm not going to do that. He's the boy. And in mom's mind, what she just said was,
right,
he should be driving his butt up here to sit across the table from Dad and I to get permission to spend time with you. But all she said was, he's the boy. Daughter had no idea what that meant. So sometimes we have to recognize they haven't been kind of culturally encompassed with those thoughts.
Exactly. We have to close in a minute. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you or Positive Waiting, what do we do?
Positively-waiting.com.
And who should contact you?
I have resources available for teens, for young adults, single adults, parents that are experiencing the challenge. It's all at positively-waiting.com. And anybody that wants to talk about booking me for an event, just ask at positively-waiting.com. I'm more than willing to talk to slumber parties, whatever is necessary to make it work so that kids can have healthy relationships.
I got to get you over to Tuesday Night Action Parent Teen Support Group.
I would love that.
To the residential.
Into residential, yeah, just let me know when.
I would love it. We'll do that.
Any Tuesday. We're there every Tuesday night, and I have usually about 40 or 50 children, teenagers, and about 40 or 50 parents, different rooms.
All right, then.
So it would be great to have you come and speak. So it's March. It's Talk to Your Teen About Sex Month. I hope you've got some tools today. If not, you can always go to positively-waiting.com, and there's some great stuff that Karen has out there for you to use.
Thank you for
to
inviting
communicate.
me.
Thank you for coming. This is Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Till next week.